the meeting hadn't yet started, but question we were just with to those who are news, and this is a long anticipated box and a bit of a case study. And I'm happy to be hosting another it brings to you on a regular basis. We have this and up the panelists a little bit attention in discussion. First is Munyara Zimbabwe. You can activate your video. Team, thank you. Way of introducing us to him, a seasoned risk professional with more than 18 years of experience in the financial. Thank you from SECZim Depository Corp. Great to have you, and we look forward to study the insights perspective and the regulatory sandbox. All day, I'm leaving the last till best because I am necessarily gender biased. Is Maferefa, who is not a new face to all of you, particularly those of you who come from regulated markets in operations, security and exchange of Zimbabwe, with extensive knowledge and finance in and investment analysis, through a variety of across stockbroking, asset management, and banking institutions. Finally, we have Grace Merejena. Grace is a not so new face to many of you. She's our resident economist, and she is the policy and with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So we have two panelists coming in perspective, although Grace will set the scene for us and span various jurisdictions and give us a feel of what is happening in this regulatory sandbox space. She is of particular note because she chairs the market subcommittee of the Committee of Insurance and Securities and Non-Banking Financial Authorities, which is SISNA CMS. Grace has over 25 years of experience in the Zimbabwe market. Is a regulator of an honors and a master's degree in economics from UZ. So welcome to all of you, our panelists, and welcome to the participants that we have this morning. Comments in questions we will tackle when the time comes of presentations this morning. If you wish to ask using audio, just put your hand up at the appropriate time, and we'll be happy to enable you to any further ado, let me invite Grace to come in with her perspective so that we understand the context of what we're trying to discuss today, and also borrow over to you, Grace. Yes, confirmed.
Okay, so thank you once again, Farai, and good morning to our participants. So, like I think my name is what we have some lessons from the regional and international perspective. In terms of the outline of my presentation, is some background, a bit of introduction, the concepts that we and the regulatory sandbox that we have high levels of that we have from other jurisdictions, the operational framework, and lastly, the conclusion. So in terms of that, I think what I would want to highlight to participants is just a reminder in terms of the objectives that we have as a commission, where as part of those objectives, the commission is actually expected to provide high levels of function. And a decision to then establish a regulatory sandbox for the Securities and Exchange Commission is to complement efforts by other regulatory authorities within the broader financial. We believe that we need a unified criterion in terms of embracing so we have introduced a regulatory within the context of our to promote markets and services that are supposed to lead in the area of investment opportunities that you can find on the capital markets. And we also believe that the operating environment is changing, and therefore the need for us to align with the changing environment. Obviously, with the changing environment, we also believe that the tests for our investors will also be changing. So as a result, as the commission, we have that we provide investors products that the needs of our. Is an introduction to the regulatory sandbox. This is coming from attempt to technology in line with our ongoing technological advancements. And regulatory sandbox is a lot of your fintechs out there. And when you're looking at fintech, we are saying this is a technology-enabled innovation, which when it is applied to market, a way of doing business. So you're looking at the business models that yes, they have been applying those models on market, the processes that we've been following, the nature and form of product we've had. When you're now looking at the introduction of fintech, we are saying it's likely to fintech as a medium some of the product value, or maybe will be used for maintenance purposes. So, this is the way you're looking at new ideas being introduced on the market, which is the reason why we took the decision to but when you're now looking at the new products and services that are likely to come on board, because we don't really understand them, and there is need for us products and services with the decision to say, why not engage with us out so that we get to understand we have that we find to be eligible in terms of participating participating or being introduced to the market, we have to test them first, so that through testing, regulating those new products. That the adoption is higher in emerging markets, as well as developing economy. And also in Russia and South Africa, 82. These are coming through innovations in the lines of payments, and we've also witnessed cryptocurrency on the market. So because we realize that as yet any of those new innovations, but given now to protect the market, there was need for us as the regulator to intervene to ensure that whilst we continue to promote the growth of the market, but we also ensure so in terms of that is more like just the box that you're seeing on the screen there. Controlled environment, why their boundaries there on the box, see that there is, and we have decided to use that picture because with sand you can build anything, but I think the sand also gives you the flexibility and allow you whatever you would have thought of from the beginning, and you can remodel whatever you had in mind. So this is the to them. Why not engage with the innovators out there? Through what we have is an innovation office with the Next Commission. So this is a tool which enables us to innovators out there, and for those we then onboard them into this regulatory sandbox. But like I indicated, the ideas that we introduce into the sandbox, we can model them, but there is also the leeway to remodel them depending on the experience that we then that is then realized as we are testing the product. It's also flexibility for us to read some of the requirements that are on the ground, so that we just allow the idea or the the idea or the innovation comes out of framework. It will continue with those relaxed requirements. What will then happen after the testing? It means we'll then have to apply the actual requirements as the innovation, the actual market. Why the controls or the boundaries there that you can see is for us as a regulator, realizing that there is still need for us to protect the investors. So there is need for risk testing any innovation. We try and put in place measures that will ensure that any threats that can come across won't have a ripple effect on the broader market. Hence the reason why we have those boundaries. The boundary safeguards in terms of protecting the broader capital market. And then in terms of the core functions of the regulatory sandbox, like idea or any innovation that we have on board, but obviously subject to those controls. There is the need, there is equity in terms of the way we test these new products. Hence the reason why we have guidelines in place that have to be followed. And I think this is what I think one of the presenters is going to focus on in terms of how we then apply this any innovation that we onboard into the regulatory sandbox. And again, the aspect of risk management, the regulators is obliged to maintain that level of protection is required for the stability of the capital market. And as we test again these innovations, our experience during the testing period is supposed to inform policy, so that as the testing period comes to an end, at least also then to provide for the growth and expansion of that service or product that we're introducing onto the broader market. So in terms of objectives of this regulatory, we are saying it's supposed to foster innovation. We want to align with technological advancement, and as the capital market, we need to embrace the technology so that it contributes to the ease of doing business as well as the efficiency in terms of how we do our business. We also believe that it also provides principles for operationalizing a lot of these yes. So it's in place, we have a framework that we have to follow so that at least we then at the end of the day are able to operationalize any ideas that are out there. And again, we are saying it's supposed to provide for the testing of you can imagine if we were to test these new ideas without any controls in place, the impact that we may end up should anything and there are no controls in place. So these are some of the objectives that you will find on the ground of what we are trying to achieve through the regulatory examination. So in terms of lessons from other jurisdictions, national standards, yes, in around this space, that are still understanding. So different different approach in terms of how they are embracing technology. Jurisdictions that have adopted the innovation office route, and the innovation office route given data is more expensive for a lot of jurisdictions to run. Start from the first step, using a cheaper approach. So this is what we have done as well. We started off with the tool, which is our office for engaging innovators, and given the stage where we are now, we have managed to establish this regulatory sandbox. We are able to test a lot of the ideas that you have out there. So just running across the number of jurisdictions that are highlighted on the screen. Rwanda, Peru, we have in place Brazil, Mozambique, and the EU. They've taken the regulatory on the other countries there. That's the that in the synergy. So in conclusion, what we are saying as a commission is that the operating environment is changing. There is ongoing technological advancements, and we have to adapt to those changes. Hence the reason why we are embracing technology we are open to engaging with innovators out there, and we are ready to test any eligible innovations that can be introduced onto the capital market, so that we change the way we've been doing things for the better, obviously. And this is to do with easing the doing business, and also improving efficiency in the way we are doing business on the capital market. And what we may want to highlight is the fact that we are actually not reinventing the wheel, as you have seen from my being done elsewhere, and we are just learning from other jurisdictions. And obviously, this is with an overarching objective regulator to the development of our market, is being part of our mandate as the Securities and Exchange Commission. So in conclusion, the Commission is open for any innovations, those with new ideas that they believe can actually be introduced on the market. The door is open, and we are ready to test your innovations. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you so very much for your very concise presentation. I've learned a great deal from it, and I feel that this is that intersection that you are providing between the innovation and also the oversight role, and trying to see what excitement and what possibilities and what development potential there is in that space. And of course, the next presentations will elucidate this much more. I also note, Grace, from the regulator level, there is that a perpetual juggling act between ensuring equity amongst regulated entities, managing risk or taking a close look at the risk, in the sandbox, providing that live testing opportunity, and ultimately seeing how policy is informed by the collection of these activities. I think let's dive into the next presentation from Munyaradzi, who's joining us from Chengetedzai, as it is called in the market. And Munyaradzi, you are free to share your presentation, as well as have your video on, whichever you're most comfortable doing, and take us through your presentation, because we are really keen to understand what the nuts and bolts were like for you as you went through the what started off as Innovation Office, as Grace threw up in her slide, in the experiences around the world where various approaches have been taken and graduated into the sandbox, and ultimately ended up with the securities lending and borrowing product. Munyaradzi, I see you are ready. Your presentation is up. Please go into presentation mode and unmute. Yes, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Munyaradzi. We look forward to your presentation.
Right, thank you there, Farai. Confirm you can see the presentation.
Yes, and you are clearly audible too. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you so much. To highlight there, I'm the head of risk and compliance at Chengetedzai. And as you rightly say, Chengetedzai, this is what we are called on the market. We are a depository company, and currently we are the largest depository company in Zimbabwe. And as we speak, we are responsible for clearance and settlements and custodianship of at least 85% of the listed counters on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And Chengetedzai itself is a public company with the biggest shareholding in government through quasi-government entities. And then the remainder, about 52%, is remaining in the founding shareholders. Operations started effectively on the market in 2014. Hence, we are in our 10th year, going into the 11th year as we speak. So as far as this securities lending and borrowing, by way of overview, Chengetedzai being keen in innovation on the market to bring solutions, was looking at the happenings on the market, and around 2020 to 2023, we did notice that there were some transactions happening on the market, wherein investors were actually lending and borrowing each other shares, and it was outside the regulated environment, simply because that product of securities lending and borrowing was not there on the market. So from that time, actively working towards introducing SLB on the market. And we are happy to advise, as already highlighted by the previous presenter, that the regulator is also very active, and they've been looking at it and seeing the need. Hence, they introduced the Sandbox guidelines for any new product that will be introduced on the capital market to come through the test environment. And so that then at the end of the day, things happen in an orderly manner, as highlighted. So in 2024, there were significant market consultations by the regulator, SECZim, regarding Sandbox guidelines. And market participants, including ourselves, we had the chance of making our contributions there. And then in August 2024, those guidelines were then effectively issued to the market, paving way for products to actually be introduced in an order. And the operational modalities, so was that from Q3 2024, SECZim actually operationalized the Sandbox guidelines and brought the product live on the market, to say whoever had any product to test with those Sandbox guidelines. So our internal finalization of development process, as far as this SOB is concerned, having conceptualized the idea from 2022 now into 20 wide market consultations about securities lending and borrowing. The important thing is already highlighted by the presenter was that getting the view at all markets in world, in the African markets, that is fairly coming on, and you find that these experiences probably going back 3 to 5 years is highlighted. So in Q1 2023, we then did significant market consultations and they engaged all participants. Then in Q2, we then engaged the association level parties, who include the brokers, the custodians, transferees, our asset managers, and also involved and engaged the regulator at that time, as well as the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And the buy-in and thoughts that we enhance our product. We then finalized our consultations with later into 2024. And later to sit and finalize our process flows as well as our rules, allowed us to actually finalize and go towards gazetting of those rules. And further discussion happened with the regulator. Agreed that because it's a fairly long process, will actually happen parallel to the actual issuance and testing of the product on the market. Resulted in holding a market-wide seminar in Q4 2024 to get more buy-in, more thoughts, and more ideas from the market. And at that time, we also had active participation from our counterparts in Kenya, who are actually well into the and having followed that process in Q1 2020, the regulator approved that to the market, but for a start in a regulatory sandbox testing environment for an initial period of 6 months. We are happy that this will change and the whole market participants to actually see where there is need to firm up or change or improve. And because it's a regulatory sandbox environment, we'll be able to have some leeway to actually make some adjustments as necessary to once this is completed. So as we speak right now, SECZim is actually the sandbox environment, and we are saying in the sandbox environment, proper live transactions are actually brought onto the system. And at the present moment, what SECZim is focusing on, because had the final approval coming through from the regulator towards the end of Q1 2025. So what we are now doing is further consultations with the key participants in the securities lending and borrowing product environment, who are largely the agents, and these are largely stock brokers. And we are focusing on having meetings with them, representing significant feedback as far as their further expectations, the challenges, and their suggestions as far as borrowing is concerned. Where we are is that we see that there are a good number of ready lenders who have been presented by our brokers who are also there, but what constituents further suggestions for refinement of our sandbox environment framework, so that they actually come through in a way that they believe will actually be helpful. And consultations with our regulator actually continue as we are in the sandbox, so that when we bring on our initial transactions, they will be actually encompassing and addressing the key requirements of the various things actually meeting. So we are actually involved in discussions wherein part of the framework will possibly be adjusted, and once agreed, as highlighted, we should actually be able to see live transactions actually coming through. And we are happy that this, since approval by the regulator, we are just 2 full months, but we are close to 2 full months, but we are already receiving, and we have received very positive feedback from the market, wherein one party is ready to lend, but they are also highlighting 1 or 2 concerns, and then the other parties are ready to borrow. They are also highlighting 1 or 2. I would go on to the key features of the securities lending and borrowing model that is introduced by SECZim. You'll find that largely we have got about 2 key aspects there. We have the screen-based model, wherein the borrowers and lenders are actually merged on the screen on a system that SECZim is going to provide. For a start, because that is a significant investment, and given that we are in a test environment, what SECZim decided to do was to go and bring in the second model, that is called the bilateral model. In our view, that one in general is more friendly and a bit cheaper for a product that is being introduced, which we introduced in the sandbox testing environment is wherein borrowers and lenders find each other. They do that through SLB agents who are the brokers, as we highlighted. And they can also even come through whichever other parties are actually licensed on the capital markets, and then they come through having agreed on lending and borrowing terms. Once they actually agree, they actually are asked the lender to sign the securities lending and borrowing lending forms. The borrowers sign the borrowers forms. And once the agents conclude and are comfortable that to SLB contract and in our system, the office system that is going to actually house the securities lending and borrowing transactions, quite useful and important. And at the moment, we are all happy that it should be able to serve the purpose for a start. So SECZim will then enter those onto the system. And why we are doing it internally for a start is, as highlighted, because we are still in a test environment, want to see what exactly will happen and how much excitement and activity this SLB is going to bring to the market. But so far, the indications are quite encouraging. Then from there on, we go to the tracking, monitoring, and reporting. As far as that tracking and monitoring, SECZim will be market the various transactions, which will actually be on our system, covering the specific collateral that we have been agreed in ZWG, our SIG, cash in USD, also included treasury bills. We are still getting feedback from various market participants on behalf of their clients. Some of the clients have directly approached SECZim to also consider other wider, broader securities, for example, real estate. These are discussions that are actually ongoing as we are in the sandbox with our regulator to also see risks and how best they can be managed if we are to widen doors. But the idea is to then bring a safe and useful product on the market that will actually be able to be taken on safely. And at the end, the idea is to ensure that the lender is not worse off after the transactions. And finally, we believe that in the process flow also allows for the necessary adjustments to be made in the regulatory sandbox framework as we will be going, and all those adjustments will be happening in clear collaboration with our regulator, as the regulator will be very active in the sandbox environment. We believe that the SLB brings in numerous advantages to the market. I will not go into the specific details regarding those, but we believe that there will be increased market product options on the markets. A lot of markets are developing towards introducing more products. We are happy that even locally, we are seeing a lot of activity and enhancements of products, and SECZim with this securities lending and borrowing product to enable the markets to be broader and wider and deeper, in our view. And it should also be able to increase market activity, because when there are more products, we believe essentially, naturally, there should be room for more activity. And we should also be able to see increased activity, given the various options that we have been available to the market, other than the traditional buying and selling of the shares. If shares can actually be lent, because what we have noted in our consultations when we were introducing this product is that a number of individuals, corporates, and institutional investors actually have shares that they actually want to use in the very long term. And a lot of them would be happy to lend them out and earn something, but obviously under agreed circumstances that will cover them to ensure that they do not lose their shares at the end of the day. Hence, this SLB product. And as highlighted, the SLB should be able to help the market utilize idle shares and actually create value. And we also believe it then helps enhance market understanding of fairly complex products, because in our view, SLB is not a generic product. We fairly market. We believe that it's a manner of simplifying and helping the market understand. And we are actually encouraged that we also got even direct calls from some people who are direct investors and players on the capital markets. Some of them actually got wind of this through various channels as this was widely circulated to the market, and they wanted to just have an understanding, and we were ready to do that, to explain to them, and some of them we actually referred them to the SLB agents. And in our view, this kind of development is very helpful for the market because it enhances the market in a number of ways. It's actually highlighted. I think for now, that's what I would say. Thank you so much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Mnyarazi. And I know that it's impossible for you to fully do justice to the topic in the time that we have allowed, but I think this webinar provides an introductory overview of the work that has been done and the stage that the product has reached, and also the time you dwelt on the key features. I found very helpful. And then finally, providing that current status and the expectation you have from the market in terms of interaction, which interaction will then further inform what happens next following the lapsing of the 6-month review period. Thank you very much, Mnyarazi, and congratulations to all of you, and commendations to the regulator for the support that they are providing you, which you indicated during the course of your presentation. I don't want to preempt Norman's presentation, who is next. So Mnyarazi, perhaps you can stop sharing while I invite Norman in. And I know Norman is normally very concise in the hope that he'll leave us a few minutes for our questions at the end of his presentation. But I think what is clear as we are continuing this conversation is that there are a number, there's the interplay where the SLB is designed, as Mnyarazi explained, to boost liquidity and market depth. But also, I think on the other side, it raises the role of the regulator from an operational standpoint, and also to constantly have their eye on issues of systemic risk. It is natural to be expecting greater activity, and I'm thinking that perhaps Norman in his comments might also touch on the what it is you are seeing. Well, when you're answering maybe questions, you can tackle that to see what is the true forecast regarding the product. But I'm also thinking that Norman may allude to one or two of these issues during his presentation. Norman, thanks. Your presentation is up. I'm inviting you to go into presentation mode so that we follow more easily. And as soon as you're ready, you can unmute and proceed. Thank you, Norman. While we're waiting, I'm just appreciating the participants that have come onto the webinar. It's a resounding number, and I do hope that you are learning and also gathering confidence to approach the regulator and become participants for your innovations in the sandbox. Norman is ready now. Norman, please go ahead.
Thank you, Farai. Is my presentation clear?
Yes, it is, Norman. And thanks for jumping straight in and not going through the cover slides, etc. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning once again to the participants and the presenters. So I think in terms of my task today is to look at the regulatory aspects of the sandbox. And my colleague Grace has highlighted that the idea behind the sandbox is to allow and accommodate those who want to experiment with ideas, those who want to test their products outside the normal regulatory environment, but in a controlled environment. Why controlled environment is that we then don't want them to, we want to minimize or to mitigate the risk that may arise from the introduction of that product or that idea in a sandbox. So in terms of our structure, architecture of our sandbox, which was introduced by the Commission, we have designed it in a way that it is time-bound. So it's not a perpetual. Licenses, we offer you a perpetual life. But for sandbox products, it will be time-bound. I'll explain it later in terms of what are the timelines for the product in a sandbox. And it is also live because we are testing the experiment on a regular basis until the lifespan, and it's controlled. We also need then to balance the scale in terms of which product is being tested. So it will be on a small scale, but we have not really defined the limits, because it will be on a case-by-case basis. And like we have highlighted, this is subject to a regulatory discretion, and it's not as one size fits all. It will be on a case-by-case basis, and also proportional to the risk, and also to proportional to the amount or the value of the project itself. There will be limits or parameters within the testing framework, in which the ideator or the person who has got the promoter has come up with. We then agree between the Commission and the promoter to say which parameters are we comfortable with it as a Commission in terms of protecting the participants and also our market. The promoters and I think they must also adhere to the ethics and integrity of the market. Yes, it's a product being tested. If the product then has got a significant bearing negative impact on the integrity of our market, we then need to make sure that we manage it well. So the idea in terms of the sandbox is to experiment, develop. Was I think the development part of it we are doing together between the promoter and the Commission. Then we introduce, once you are satisfied that you are now ready for the market, we then introduce it to the market. So the process itself, how is the approval process done? The promoter engages with the innovation office, which sits under our policy and capital markets development department. So they will give you a form where what we call an assessment form with the supporting documents. I will highlight which supporting documents you are supposed then to bring. And the preliminary assessment, the feedback you are given within 7 working days. So once the assessment is done, and the testing application form with supporting documents has been submitted to the Commission, you are then supposed to pay an application fee. It's a very nominal fee. It's not much. So far we are just charging $100, regardless of the scale of the project. Then what follows after the payment of the application fee is a detailed assessment process, which is not one way. So there will be engagement on a one-to-one basis. Sometimes it's done offline, sometimes done online. So that feedback, we look at a period of around 21 days. And after 21 days, once the testing period is subject to testing guidelines, we then approve the project. So in terms of, I've highlighted that in terms of the period or the life of the project, we'll look at 12 months, after which the licensing in a live environment. What are the target participants? This is open to everyone. It's open to our licensed market intermediaries. I think you have heard SECZim that they actually working with us on their securities and lending borrowing product. We have got a number of projects that are already being assessed by the team, which will go live very soon. We also deal with even unregulated entities, even individuals, firms, any form of, as long as it's a legal entity in whatever form. It can be a combination of both, where the unregulated entity partners a regulated entity. So we accept both combinations. So both us and the promoters, we aspire to innovate for the development of the capital markets, which at large will then also cascade or filter into the development of the economy. So what are the eligibility criteria? So you just need to be a legal person. You must be a person resident in Zimbabwe. So by persons, it can be a corporate or non-corporate. Then you then need to be approved by the Commission for light testing in the Innovation Office. You must also have a conditional intention to offer innovative. So we look at whether that project does it have innovative qualities and characteristics. So we are not promoting the products that are already there. So we need products which are very innovative and which is going to save the development of the capital markets. We need to also provide a statement, demonstrate the need for the readiness for live testing, so that we don't waste each other's time. We must be serious from both the Commission and from the promoter's point of view. For certification for fit and probity, you must provide certified copies of all registration documents. If it is a corporate body, maybe schedule of directors and shareholders. If you're individual promoters, your CVs of promoters and key management and key personnel. And you have capacity to onboard at least 100 clients. That's the guideline so far. But this can be varied on a case-by-case basis. So in terms of the project plan, what the participant must provide to the Commission, you must then provide what we call key testing objectives and also the problem to be solved. You must provide the testing metrics. You must provide methodologies that are going to be deployed or implemented in terms of testing the product. The scope in testing parameters. So here we're looking at the target market, the number of the investors or the participants, and the type of the participants in this experiment. And this testing period so far must not exceed 12 months. So that's a year. But this can be varied if we later on, if we think the period might be too long or too short. Then also, what are the systems that are available to ensure that the client data, privacy and confidentiality is protected? So we also make sure that in terms of record keeping during the test period, we need then to record and keep, need to keep in our records the key performance indicators and milestones. If there are any key incidents incidents that have happened and any mitigatory measures that were taken, these are also kept as part of our records. Any complaints that were received from participants in the sandbox, and also the risks that we would have encountered or materialized during the testing period. This should be then kept in our records. And if there were any proposed changes to the innovation during the period, we also need to keep that in our record. This is really for our and consider to look at to see whether we did very well, where did we miss, and how do we resolve those issues. So after 12 months, what happens? We need then to have key outcomes and key performance indicators. We need to complete. We need so to outline or detail lessons learned from the failed test, and if any successful test, the plan on how to transition onto the commercial development, to transition into the market now. So that has to be clearly and provided for. How then we transition from the experiment to either the market or the exit plan. So we need that plan as well, which details outlining the future development or deployment of the proposed innovation commercially in the event of success. Failure, the exit plans outline. This is done. These are some of the things that has to be clear in terms of the project. I think I've been very precise. I think that's a good outline, but I think most of the issues we cover for the market, then introduce it, but subject to our regulations. Thank you, Farah, and thank you, participants.
Norman, thank you very much. And notwithstanding the fact that there were two very good presentations before yours, your presentation brought much needed spotlight on the actual matters. I think a couple of questions then arose both from your presentation and other presentations. So very much appreciated, Norman. Thank you so much for that. I've got one, but I also am aware of that have come. I am looking as well, given that first meant to raise the question has raised slowly university now have education hubs. It's I would be best to tackle this question. Now, like to you, just to issue more in your experience.
Right. In my presentation, the innovations and innovation hubs that have been established with a lot of universities, and we believe that driving the future are actually open to innovations from the side. And I also innovate in the moment. There's actually work which is underway with some of the innovation hubs and the commission in terms of some which are being developed for purposes of automating regulatory processes for the commission. So this also complements the regulatory sandbox, and it can come through the sandbox approach or through the approach that we have taken. It's more of a competitions approach, but here, thank you, Farai.
Very much, Grace, and I think that it's a very directed response, and also illustrates the other efforts that the Commission is engaged in harnessing innovation that exists outside the Commission, but which can be then harnessed for use as the Commission capital market to innovate and develop that service offering. Munyaradzi, I'm gonna push into the deep end, and if you struggle, Norman will come in to rescue you if you need rescuing at all. But I think there is a comment here which says, I like how Securities noticed that SLB deals were happening without proper rules and took action to fix it. It's good to see that they reached the regulator on guidelines, and now the sandbox is up and running. It shows a good balance between new ideas in the sandbox in early 2025. How will you make sure everything stays in line with the rules and doesn't go back to being unregulated? I know Norman alluded to this in one of his later slides in his presentation, but Munyaradzi, why Norman, if you can come in and then also round off that segment of the discussion. Thanks, Munyaradzi.
All right, thank you so much, Farai, and we appreciate that question, very important. So I think I'm happy to highlight that this is the importance of the sandbox environment. And as I mentioned in the presentation, we had to come up with SLB rules, and we had to come up with SLB proper process flows and our own internal guidelines on how the SLB product to actually operate. And I think I also indicated the responsibilities of our SLB agents, who are mostly the brokers and any of our licensed entity within the capital markets. They are also free to bring clients to Securities. And we actually discuss in detail to highlight their responsibilities. And we have also shared with them our process. And as we are finalizing the rules, I think then the whole market will then be able to have those rules once they are finalized, taking into account our findings and further fine-tunings that are actually happening in the sandbox. So, but for a start, as we are operating, once the SLB agent is comfortable that the transactions are in order, I did mention that they are supposed to complete the SLB forms. We try to put in as much information there, and we will check that information from this end. Information about the borrower, information about transaction. We will be monitoring very closely. All that is meant to ensure that the transactions do not, at the end of the day, delve outside the agreed framework. Why? Because obviously, as the comment and as the attendee highlights, that the requirement for this is that we saw it that some of these things are happening, but most importantly, that we needed to innovate on the market and bring more depth and more activity on the market, And we believe that within the agreed framework that we have in the sandbox, encompasses our SOB rules, our SOB process flows, we should be able to monitor and ensure that all transactions are operating within. Energies, taking those and checking those through the agents who will bring everything into line. Thank you.
And, can I invite Norman in if you believe you'd like to add something to that, Norman, so that we're able to understand whether is this all a big build-up only for it all to come to naught, or are there also some inbuilt measures to ensure along the way that failure is averted, so to speak, Norman?
Right, and thank you for the participant who is for that question. Yes, so what is already in place is the approved rules for the securities lending and borrowing, which the Commission approved, and the rules are now being worked by the Attorney General. The rules are also approved by the Minister. So what is only awaiting is for the publication of the rules. But what we then said, we can't wait until the rules are published, but let's test the environment. Let's test the product for the sandbox environment. And I'm happy, like Nyarad has highlighted, SECZim, it's a proposal that we regulate and with tested processes and procedures which are already in place. So for this product, in terms of the risk management and also the right regulation part of it, it's already in place. So I think the participants will be safe and secure. It will be a secure product. Thank you, Farah. I'm not at 11 o'clock meeting, but I can take 2 or 3 questions before you another meeting.
Please, thanks very Norman. So prioritize you when I ask thank you for the presentations, of course, and then there are 2 questions. The first one, in the sandbox, efficient players, investors, data to stress test the viability, feasibility of the innovation, and secondly, in the sandbox, is there protection for competitive advantage? I believe this is a question for both Norman and Grace. Norman, do you mind just giving us a few insights before you jump off? And then Grace, you can continue with that, if that's all right. Norman?
So in terms of the number of participants, that's why we came up with a minimum to say it must be at least 100. So I don't know whether that will be a sufficient answer to that question. But we started with a minimum of 100. But remember, it's a small scale. Because we don't want to go to a large scale. Because once it goes to large scale, there's a lot of risk that might be introduced into the market. So we also need to limit in terms of the numbers. Also need to limit in terms of the value of the project. Because once we are happy that the project it meets our criteria for it to then participate in the market, then we introduce that project. I think believe it's a risk that can be managed in our market. So in terms of the data points, both it's a 1 year. It's a 1 year. The life is 1 year. So it's effective in terms of you can get a very good data set for testing. But it's something that we can improve and look at it in terms of the with the of what's we can then include to make sure that answer that question it's actually fully addressed in terms of the testing of the product. But Grace can come in if I've missed anything.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Norman. And, kindly excuse. Thank you for making time. And I'm sorry we overran somewhat. All the best for your next one. Grace, please do come in. And Grace, as you're coming in, please also tackle after that one, the one on our fintech, solar asset managed physical solar assets allowed to use the sandbox. And that will have to be the last one, looking at our clock, we'll need to wind down. So Grace, the last word belongs to you, as it were.
Thank you, Farai. I think to add on to what Norman is highlighted there is the aspect of us having had to come up with a minimum in terms of the numbers. So there, I think participants will also note that in addition to that minimum, we then also indicated that it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So that was to provide for the varying levels of maturity or maybe size in terms of the innovations that can be tabled with the Commission for testing purposes. So I think with that in mind, should they be we stress test to because there is need for us to probably maybe numbers from 100. I think that's the aspect of the case by case now basis when you're saying if there is need for that, then we can reconsider the number so that are the adequate numbers for us to allow for that to happen. So I think as Anomene is highlighted, that's the approach, and probably maybe with the experience within the testing, the regulatory sandbox, we can then adjust those numbers should there be need to do so. And then the other question, Farai, was on the solar.
The question was, are fintech solar asset managers of physical solar assets allowed to use the sandbox? Grace?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm understanding well, if I've understood well the question there, but maybe it's just to highlight there to say, as a regulator of capital markets, our focus is mainly on securities. So anything outside securities, it would then be meant maybe for other regulatory spaces. But for us, if it's anything related to securities, if it's any innovation, maybe that solar, it could be some solar project which is coming in, probably maybe through some certificate of some sort, be it some renewable energy, then that would then be able to oversee as long as it's securities related. I think that's what I can say for now, unless maybe the participant would want to elaborate the question further.
Are you still available online? Please just confirm if you feel we've understood you and you are answered. Mute and go ahead.
And maybe what Simba is coming through, I think that's also the essence of the but to enable the regulator to understand the idea or the innovation that the innovator would be having in mind. So if, with regards to this fintech solar, should there be need for us to understand further in terms of what exactly this innovation is relating to? I think that's where we start from the innovation office, where we can call upon Simba to understand what exactly the idea that he has or the innovation that he is proposing. Then it's after that innovation office engagement when I have to test it.
Grace, thank you very much for coming in, and I haven't heard directly from Simba on that matter, so I will assume that should there be further engagement required, the door is open. Grace has made that very clear. I want to thank all participants in this very, very interesting webinar loaded with insights and learning. Very grateful to the panelists. Thank you for taking time to take us through your presentations and providing stimulating discussion. Thank you to all the participants who have spent their time, and we've overshot the time that we had allocated. We thank you very much for being with us. I think when all is said and done, we also learned that market transformation will be a threat to some, but a most welcome development to many. And I think the collaboration between the market and the regulator via the sandbox is going to be critical. And I think the last point that Grace highlights is that at a certain level, there will be the requirement for regulators themselves to be collaborative collaborating and probably cross-pollinating so that innovation is not ignored because we are worried about our individual silos. There will be need to collaborate and to continue talking. So I think the door is wide open. As long as you're an entity within our jurisdiction that you want the market space to explore, and even if you think it could be in the capital market, please come forward and engage the regulator, and you might see yourself on the other side several months hence, now talking and presenting as Chingetedza is doing on the SLBs and other innovations. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your week. And to the team behind the scenes, we are most grateful for your coordination efforts. Have a wonderful from the commission. Bye-bye.